David has prayed for enemies to be shamed and scattered. Now he turns his attention in the opposite direction. 2 verses remain in this psalm, and they move from judgment on the wicked to blessing on the righteous, and then to David's own condition before God. The contrast is sharp and deliberate. Let all those that seek thee rejoice, and be glad in thee. And let such as love thy salvation say continually, God be magnified. Psalm 70 verse 4. David shifts from his enemies to the congregation of believers. The people he describes here are defined by 2 characteristics. They seek God, and they love his salvation. These are not passive descriptions. Loving salvation means the heart has settled on what God provides rather than what the world offers. David prays these people will rejoice and be glad. The 2 words are not identical. Rejoicing carries the idea of exultant celebration, while gladness points to a deep, settled joy that does not depend on immediate circumstances. David asks for both. He wants the people of God to experience the full range of what God's presence produces in a human soul. The phrase "in thee" locates the source of this joy. David does not pray that they rejoice in deliverance, in victory, or in favorable conditions. He prays they rejoice in God himself. This is the distinction between a faith that celebrates what God gives and a faith that celebrates who God is. Both have their place, but David anchors the congregation's joy to God's person rather than God's gifts. The second half of the verse commands a specific declaration. Those who love God's salvation are to say, God be magnified. This removes any limitation on when this praise is appropriate. This praise is genuine all the time, not only in seasons of blessing, not only when enemies have been scattered, but all the time. The declaration, God be magnified, means God is to be exalted, lifted high in the sight of all. This is the proper response of every person who has received salvation they did not earn and could not produce themselves. But I am poor and needy. Make haste unto me, O God. Thou art my help and my deliverer. O Lord, make no tarrying. Psalm 70, verse 5. David closes the psalm by returning to himself. After praying for enemies to fall and for the righteous to rejoice, he names his own condition, poor and needy. These 2 words together describe someone who lacks resources and depends on another for survival. David is not speaking of financial poverty alone. He is naming his spiritual and physical state before God. David admits he has nothing to bring. He has no reserve of strength to draw upon when he arrives at God's throne. This honesty is not weakness. It is the correct posture before God. The New Testament confirms this pattern throughout. Jesus declares in Matthew 5, verse 3, that the poor in spirit receive the kingdom of heaven. God does not require a person to arrive with something to offer. He requires them to arrive knowing they have nothing. David repeats his opening command, make haste. The urgency has not left the psalm. He names God as his help and his deliverer, 2 titles that carry the full weight of God's covenant commitment to his people. Help describes God's active help in the moment of need. Deliverer describes God as the one who pulls his people out of what they cannot escape alone. The last phrase, make no tarrying, closes the psalm on the same note it opened. David began by asking God to act and ends by asking God not to delay.